backyard playing. It's a real hot, sunny day, about 97, 98 degrees. Not real humid, but it was hot, though. Anyway, I went into the kitchen to pour a glass of lemonade, because I used to love lemonade. I still drink it. I don't drink it as much as I did when I was a little girl. Sometimes I drink it all day long. I drink so much I'd be laying in bed at night. Mom, I got a tummy ache. Anyway, so I'm in the kitchen, and in the kitchen was my dad, my mom, all my brothers and sisters just standing there staring at me about to start laughing. And I'm like, what? So my dad said, Ellen, honey, we've never liked you as well as the other children, so we've sold you to a tribe of Iroquois Indians. They'll be here to pick you up in about an hour. We're going to the ice capades. Goodbye. Good luck. I was 7. So I lived in the Origines Mountains for about 9 years with the Iroquois, learning basket weaving and pottery making. I taught them that noise you make under your armpit. That was a skill I had. And it was customary to marry within the tribe at 13 and have several papooses, which I did. And Tuku were their names. Anyway, 9 years later, trudging up the mountains comes my dad, my mom, all my brothers and sisters carrying a big pitcher of lemonade. Of course, my tribe and I didn't recognize them. We were shooting them with bows and arrows and everything, you know. But they got up to the top and they said, we were just kidding, we love you, come on home. And, we went home and laughed and laughed and laughed. Here's the funny thing. The funny thing is, they weren't even real Indians. They were actors my dad had hired to play Indians just to fool me. Even today, I'll be watching like an old rerun of Love Boat or Mannix with my dad, and we'll say, oh, there's Running Steve. That's not his real name, and I know that now. It's Rick Schroeder. I thought he was a real Indian. I didn't know. He was always joking around, my dad. My dad's famous saying was, kids, this is no picnic. Once he said it, and we already had the tablecloth out on the grass and everything. Actually, because my memory is so bad, most of that stuff about my dad isn't exactly totally 100% true. But here's some stuff that is. Kinda. A little bit. My dad would always pay for things with change. I can see wanting to get rid of it. It's change. But if he was always paying for stuff with it, why was his dresser always covered with it? The entire top of it. I asked him about it one day, and he said to me, Beth, I'll tell you what, I've always loved coins. In fact, I wanted to be a pirate when I got out of college, but then I met your mother, and before I knew it, I had a family to raise. I guess these coins are like the booty, and this dresser is my treasure chest that will never be. I'm pretty sure he was just joking about not knowing my name. When my dad would buy gas, he'd say to the attendant, $1 a regular, Podna. He called a lot of people Podna. I don't know if it was a New Orleans thing or if he just couldn't remember people's names. Come to think of it, he called me Podna a lot. Not to mention that $1. But then to try to sound cool, he'd call the attendant Podna. I would slide down on my seat feeling sorry for the Podna. I don't know why he'd never spring for more than $1. Of course, back then, boy, that's when you know you're old, when you say back then. You never hear a child say back then. $1 took you a lot further. Farther? Let's just say it took you a long ways. We didn't have money, really, but I didn't feel poor at all. That is, until we'd go out to buy something and it'd pay for it with change. It's one thing to buy a newspaper or candy with change, but a shirt or a lamp? That's not right. We'd be standing in line with him while he counted out $34.50, $34.55, $34.60, $34.65. There you go, Podna. Every Saturday and Sunday of my youth was spent looking at real estate that we couldn't afford. Not that these houses were estates or mansions, which actually could have been fun. No, we looked at normal 2-bedroom homes in regular middle-class neighborhoods just out of our price range. That didn't stop my dad from looking at the same house over and over and over again. As a kid, I didn't really realize how completely insane this was. I was frustrated, though, because it was very exciting to think that we could own our very own house. I would imagine what it would be like every weekend when we would go back to look at it. Never mind that we were 2 children, grown, and these were 2-bedroom houses. There were always the same discussions at every house. Well, your brother could sleep in the breakfast nook. Yes, a bed could fit in there. Or in the closet. Or a garage. It would always end the same. The house would be sold eventually, and we would move on to the next one. I'm sure the real estate agents hated us. We must have been famous in the city of New Orleans for being the family that looked every weekend for months at the same houses but wouldn't even make an offer. Although it seems unlikely because that takes so long to say, I doubt people would take the time to repeat it enough to make us famous. We were probably slightly well known. We never owned a new car, but we looked at quite a few. I remember being at a car dealership one time. I must have been around 11 years old. I was sitting in the passenger seat of a luxury sedan, flipping the vanity mirror up and down on the visor and wishing my dad's moped had a vanity mirror, or even a passenger seat. I looked over to see my father standing in the salesman's office, a sight I had never seen in all the time we'd spent trolling every auto showroom in town. I looked around the big, beautiful new car-smelling car that I was sitting in and dreamed of pulling up in front of my school in it with everyone watching, even the substitute teachers. All the kids would ask me if they could have a ride. I'd say yes, and they'd hoist me on their shoulders and parade me around the tetherball courts. Right at the best part of this fantasy, the part where I was being awarded a lifetime supply of cafeteria tater tots, my father leaned into the car and said, "Let's get going, Bellhead." He called me that every once in a while when I was a child. I think it was his idea of a funny nickname, but it just made me think my head was really big. What did I know? I can't see my head the way an objective observer can. It took me years of therapy to realize that if my head could fit into a standard-sized hat, it couldn't be much bigger than anyone else's. Thank God for that new school of psychology that developed hat therapy, or I would have been convinced I was a big-headed freak for the rest of my life. Anyway, I asked my father what kind of car we were getting and if it could please be orange, because that was the color car that I figured would make me the most popular at school. He looked at me with a sweet, salty expression and said, "Oh, no, honey, I wasn't in there buying a car. The salesman and I just got to talking about how it's impossible to find a decent house in this city." My disappointments must have gotten the better of me because I burst into tears. Come to think of it, I know it got the better of me because there was an unspoken ban on expressing emotion in our family, so I wouldn't have cried unless it was an absolute emergency. My father turned away until I was finished, then handed me one of his handkerchiefs with a little nose embroidered on the corner. "Don't cry, Ellen. Someday you can write about this in your memoirs." I looked up at my father, listening to the faint jingle of change in his pockets and seeing the love and kindness in his eyes, and said, "You can't tell me what to do. You're not the boss of me." Come to think of it, I was probably 13 at the time. A wave of frustration had crested inside of me, and on that wave was this tiny, brave surfer of self-expression. I found myself hanging 10 in a way I never dreamed I could before. I realized I liked that feeling. Yes, thinking back, that outburst has come to symbolize the end of my childhood for me.